Perfect. Okay, welcome everybody to the October 15th or 14th meeting of the Grand Forks Social Service Advisory Group. I'd like to begin by acknowledging and honoring with gratitude that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of First Nation elders and peoples who have lived and continue to live here and have cared for these lands. Just a brief reminder that when you log into the meeting, you're going to be in a waiting room and then bumped in. And when it's your turn to speak, please unmute. And when you're not speaking, please mute so we don't get any feedback. Has everybody had a chance to look at the agenda for the day?
Yes.
Does anybody have any late additions or amendments that they'd like to see made to the agenda?
Yes, Chair. I'd like to take a look at the agenda to have the group consider adding a couple things. And perhaps if I could get Kevin, I'm going to share my screen. If I could, I'm going to hope it works. Sorry, Chair. I don't know if this is the agenda. Can you see that, Chair?
Yep, we can.
Okay, we're at the adopt agenda, add late items. Okay, I would like to have a couple items for consideration of the group. If they can give me some instruction on where to add them into the agenda if they wish to. The first is to add a discussion on the referendum question on a by-election ballot about supportive housing. I'd like to add that somewhere as it is a current council consideration. And I sort of suggest it might be added under new business if the committee wants to put it there.
I think that makes sense for now, Councillor Moslin.
Okay, the second item I'd like to have the group consider as how whatever happens to the group today, but the distribution of minutes is, I have become a catalog of the minutes. I distribute the approved minutes freely to the members, but I don't post them on a public site. Okay, they're not, so that's coming back to me. So I just was going to ask the group that, with their permission, I would just create, if the group agrees, a public Facebook group called Grand Forks Social Services Advisory Group. Make it as minimal a group as possible, not even allow commenting perhaps, and just post the minutes there. Unless somebody else out there has a better suggestion for making the minutes available publicly, Chair. So I'd like to just talk about that somewhere in the agenda.
Okay, well, let's just tag that onto new business under 5 as well.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Are there any other comments or amendments that anybody would like to see made to the agenda before we move to pass? Okay, hearing none, may I have a motion from the floor to adopt the agenda as amended by Councillor Moslin?
So moved.
Tammy, Christine, thank you. Again, we'll move to this place of Councillor Moslin, if you could actually remove so we can have a look at everybody on screen, please.
Yes, coming.
So again, we're going to move to this basis of, if you don't have any against, we will assume that you're in favor of this motion and go forward. Okay, the agenda has been approved. Next item is to approve the minutes of the August 19th, 2020 meeting. Councillor Moslin, would you like to bring up that draft of the minutes, please?
I think so. Sorry, there we go, I think, Chair. Can you see those minutes now, Chair?
Yep, they are up. And if anybody has any corrections they would like to make to these minutes.
Are we all mute? Uh-oh, did I lose you all? Chair?
No, Councilor Moslin, I think everybody's just intrigued and engrossed in reading the minutes.
Okay, well, then I don't want to scroll too fast, Chair. I did distribute these minutes earlier. You know, they're complicated. And the recording, the video of this meeting did end up on my personal YouTube station or whatever it is. And anyways, so that's kind of an interesting way of having minutes now. It's just a Zoom recording in public domain.
Okay. So at this point, does anybody have any amendments they would like to see made to these minutes? Okay, can I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented by the secretary?
Moved.
Can I get a second on that? Thank you. Okay, once again, does anybody have any objection to these minutes being approved as presented? Okay, passed. Let's see what's next. Okay. So, report on COVID outreach. So Shane was unable to join us today. Is anybody from Interior Health able to speak on the Vulnerable Populations Committee that is guiding the process? I don't actually see anybody from IH on. Okay. Teresa, do you feel comfortable providing the update? Okay. So at this point, COVID outreach continues. We've been asked to extend until March 31st pending funding from BC Housing. So it's kind of the cart before the horse. We don't have confirmation that it will extend, but the provincial health officer has made that a priority moving forward. We're still working in dyads as a team out there, and there have been no confirmed cases of COVID in that population that has necessitated a move into a motel. That's kind of what we have. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Next, search for winter shelter. That would be us. So at this point, the recommendation from the SAG went to BC Housing and City Council. My understanding is City Council did approve the Hardy View site as a potential location. And right now, BC Housing and the city are kind of trying to figure out next steps because the election seems to have thrown a bit of a wrench into this. So I am unaware of what next steps may or may not look like. Councillor Moslin, Councillor Thompson, do you have any updates on that?
Well, I think that our management staff is still working with BC Housing on something to do with the extreme weather shelter. But nothing definite or definitive has been determined at this point in time.
Okay,
So
thank you,
sorry,
Councillor.
I can't, that's all I can say on that regard.
I think at this point, people can ask questions if they want to, but I don't know that they're going to get any answers that are able to really be forthcoming. So, update from the city on John.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. With regard to the mayor's task force recommendation, and we were just informed that BC Housing has been approached and that there are talks happening about something. I guess my question is how do we move forward without any detail? We're finding ourselves in the 11th hour again with regard to the shelter in particular. We've got no detail. I'm finding it kind of difficult here to vision how we're going to move forward and get anything accomplished without any information. Why is it that we're not getting information?
If I may, Chair, could I just?
Yeah, but by all means, Councillor Moslin.
You know, also on these minutes is on the agenda is the consideration of the in-camera minutes of this committee, right? This, I'm going to be asking, a real procedural thing because we got in-camera stuff, both of this committee and of city council. The purview of this meeting is the in-camera stuff of this committee, right? The decisions in camera of council, you know, we're not going to discuss. Okay, at this point, John. All right. So, you know, that's basically, you know, we still have, if this committee has to, if this committee decides that it wants to release its own in-camera minutes, okay, then what I'm going to do at that point is I'm just going to share my screen with those minutes. Okay. And if the committee decides that they want to share them or that is consider them or amend them or whatever they want to do with those minutes, they'll first have to move in camera, right? Okay. And Chair, I'm going to really rely on your expertise in how to guide us to do that. But I hope that somehow along the line, we add a little detail to what's happened and what's likely to come ahead. Okay.
Well, I think that's hugely important considering the mandate of our committee. So would it be appropriate, Chair, at this point for me to suggest that we go in camera so that we can lend some more detail to the conversation?
I think, John, that is item 6, I believe, on the agenda. So it is already in there. So if you're comfortable deferring that until item 6.
Certainly. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
If I might, Mr. Chair, at the last regular meeting of council, there will be, staff is directed to prepare a memorandum with 2 referendum questions with respect to housing. And so the agenda, I don't believe, is out yet. So when it does come out, I would suggest and recommend you read that report. Excuse me, that might assist in clearing up some of the things that council was discussing.
Thank you for that, Councillor Thompson. If John?
Just quickly with regard to that, Christine, I'm under the understanding that the motion proposed by Councillor Krog in reference to the referendum questions was tabled until the October 19th meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
So that should be on the agenda that's coming out. I don't know if staff will get it out today, if not tomorrow.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, can somebody from the city provide an update on the SLAG and the Moto sites?
Christine, do you want to do that?
I can. That is still being the Moto. I don't think anything is being done at this time, other than ensuring that no additional RVs or whatever can be relocated to that area. And I believe there's only 4 or 5 left up there. I could be wrong, but because I understand the regional district is dismantling Dembskieville, and so I don't know where those people are going to relocate themselves. Does that answer your question?
I think it does. Does anybody have any questions for the city regarding either of those sites at this time? Anne, did I see your hand go up? Okay.
Chair?
Yep, I'm unmuted. What happened at Slag? I understood that perhaps that trailer got moved. Was it just like a few feet or something, so it didn't become city's problem anymore? Was that what happened?
No, I believe it's still within the city, and that is something that management is still working on. So I don't think I'm at liberty to say much more than that, Anne.
Okay, can I say something else?
Can I just, if I can, about the previous question, Christine, if you, my understanding, and this is just reports to council, that the trailer was moved 300 feet north, I think, and thus arrived within the RDKB setting. The city will, is continuing its injunction, which means that it had to continue to invest, had to send a survey team down there a second time. Anyways, after that, I don't know. I do have a question for the group. Is Dembski's being dismantled? Has there been any progress on that? Thank you.
So my understanding is that eviction will be official on the 31st of October from Dembskiville when the new owner takes possession, because those residents will be considered in trespass. The Residential Tenancy Act does not cover those tenants because they are not approved units. So the RTA is no protection to those folks there. So basically my understanding is what will happen on October 31st, they will be served and moved, and that will be it. Anne?
Moved where?
I don't know. Basically, probably to the top of the road where they're sitting on the North Fork to make their own way from there.
I thought these trailers and RVs were not movable.
They're not. They're highly likely to be bulldozed on site. The people will be moved out.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions?
Yeah, I want to finish what I started to say. I'm a little confused. It seems to me that we had a mandate and we were working towards it. And somehow or other, a couple of months ago, it seems to have gotten hijacked. And now we're all sitting here in a scenario where one can't talk about one thing and one can't talk about the other thing. And I'm wondering what we're doing here.
Is that question directed to anybody in particular?
Anybody who can answer it.
John, you have your hand up. John, you're still muted.
On two counts, two questions here. Firstly, to address Anne's concern, maybe I misunderstood earlier, but as we move to item 6, we're going to get some more detail. Am I correct?
That was my understanding from Councillor Moslin, is that discussions around your first question would be brought up in that in-camera session.
Okay. So then, with regard to the whole Dembski situation, what were the numbers that we had on the unofficial pit count? The number of people that were living there that would be displaced?
I think the last figure I heard was between 7 and 9.
Okay, thank you. And has Shane liaised with any of them about, moving them along and where they might go?
Nope, that's not his job.
Okay, all right. Yeah, wondering if that would fit within his job description. So in other words, we've got no idea where they're going to go. Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions or comments on that? Okay, I think we are on to supportive housing from BCH, and I don't think we have anybody on the call from BC Housing, do we? I think that one will be tabled? Is it, when was the last time we actually had a BC Housing representative participate? Can anybody recall?
I'm thinking it was June.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me too, Chair. You know, we just reviewed August's minutes. Yeah, we did drop a few beats when we didn't have the meeting in September. You know, that's part of the frustration, I think, with Ann too, when she says we're stuck. Well, yeah, that's because we missed a step. And anyways, I'm hoping that we're going to muddle through somehow this meeting and see what happens. The BC Housing was invited, of course.
Okay. Does any other agency or entity have any updates that they would like to provide to the table while we're here? John?
Real quick, I had mentioned at the last meeting that the C4 group was going to rebrand and reconfigure the mandate of the group. That has started. C4 is no longer C4. They are the Grand Forks Community Coalition. The expanded mandate is to work towards broader community representation and to expand the mandate of the group to be an official registered ratepayers association. So in other words, the focus of the group will not only be social services delivery issues, but other taxpayer issues that might come forward. We're not looking to stir the pot, but we're looking to be there available to take up taxpayer issues as they arise.
Councillor Thompson?
Yes, just a question to Anne or John. In as much as there is a by-election coming up, has anybody from that, either one of you or somebody else from that organization going to put their hat in the ring, as it were?
You know, it's an interesting question. I've been asked, but I'm not going to because I'm kind of focused on a number of different projects, and I don't want to spread myself too thin, and plus I want to enjoy my retirement. So on, you know, with respect to that, no, we have no affiliation with anybody so far who is running. I've been asked whether or not the group would take it upon themselves to promote one slate or another. We haven't really had that discussion at all. We've got a pretty diverse group, 600 members-ish. And, you know, given that, I think people are probably all over the map with regards to who they would support. I don't really know that it's our place to endorse one candidate or another. You know, what we're more leaning towards doing is just to simply represent taxpayers at the table where issues might arise. So, you know, like I say, a registered association, we've got no intent on running anyone per se, and no slate to promote here or anything.
Thank you, John. Does anybody have any other questions? Okay. So, time for you guys to elect a new chairperson. So at this point, do we have any candidates from the floor? Okay. John?
I've got a pointed question for everybody to consider, and maybe it's a comment, is that I'm getting the feeling, and I don't know if I'm right, I sure hope everybody chimes in on this, that the future of this committee is kind of in the balance with regard to filling the vacancy of chair. Given that, I would like to forward the comment that considering the timing and considering where we're at with the acquisition of a space for a shelter and the upcoming perceived deadline with BC Housing for the supportive housing project, if it happens, that this would be really bad timing at this point to abandon this committee, you know, because of a vacancy in the chair. So that's my comment.
Anne?
Yeah, I've got some concerns about it too. I think my biggest concern right now is I'm looking at this screen and I'm also looking at the number of members, and I'm seeing people on our members list that I haven't seen at a meeting for probably the last 4 or 5. And I'm wondering if they're even part of this at all. Like, are we a group? I mean, we seem to have lots of people that are supposedly representing it, but none of them are here. Or, well, some of us are, but most of us aren't. So I don't know what's going on with that, and how many times can people not make a meeting and not be removed from it? Should we be going through this list and actually crossing people off?
Chair, I'm willing to, I do have a question myself about that. I did get regrets from 2 members of the group. Sergeant Pepler did send his regrets, as did Zena Dorner. Okay, I have a question about Svetlana Dalalama. Do you want me to put that list on the screen, Mayor, Chair?
Yeah, if you would like to.
Okay, I'm going to try. If I got there, that's okay. There's the minutes. All right, and here's the list. Okay, that Anne is referring to. Nikki Best from the Downtown Business Association. I understand that she's left that group, and but I don't know really who to contact. Is
Councillor
anybody?
Moslin, if I may, so Deb Baker was contacted earlier with the invitation because she has actually been asked to represent the DBA on this committee. So she does have the information. So I'm not quite sure why she's not here.
Okay, well, thank you, Chair. That helps me out anyways. And as the table can see now, Svetlana Dalalama, who has not attended, her email, which was an Interior Health address, bounced. So I don't know if she's available anymore. And I have to tell you, Anne, that my apologies to Tanis and to the group. Tanis was in the waiting room. And I somehow, she waited there, poor lady, for 10 minutes just now, and I didn't let her in. I'm trying to do too much here, Chair. Anyhow, that's what happened to Tanis. So she was here, but she left. Kathy is here. Ellen is here. I haven't heard anything from Ian Taylor or the Seniors Society. If anybody wants to enlighten me about about that group, I certainly would like to hear about it.
I can tell you a little bit about that. I did talk with Juliana, and she said that she had sent a reminder. In fact, she copied me on it to Ian. Apparently, if he's not able to come, his second in command, Ralph White, is supposed to come. And she had said in her letter to him that if neither of them could make it, she would. But here we are again, and they're not here. In regards to Svetlana, she now has a new squeeze in Calgary, and she spends half her time in Calgary and half her time here. But as she hasn't been on this meeting since, I think, a year ago, I'm thinking she's not on this group anymore.
Yes, and that's fine by me too. I've just been automatically sending her an invite. I'll definitely drop that. I just wanted to be able to make sure that I kept up a contact with IHA. They were here previously. Bev McCormick has been here in recent meetings as well. Okay, so basically, I see Anna Lotard is here today from school district. I deliberately did not invite a lot of guests, Chair, to this meeting because I really didn't have the direction from the meeting or the chair as to who I should invite. You see that Mayor Taylor is here, as is Councillor Krog, I see it, and they're listening in. So I did extend an invitation to them. I didn't have any other guests people wanted to invite. Anyways, I hope that helps Anne's question. And I'll stop sharing my screen, Chair, if that's okay.
Okay, yes, thank you. John, I think I saw your hand come up before.
Yep. Yeah, with regards to that, I get what Ann is saying, but at this point, I don't think we need to worry about who's not attending. We've got a quorum here. I'd really like to get on with the business of filling this vacancy. I do have a suggestion. Like I said earlier, I think we'd be remiss in letting this thing tank at this point in time. I would like to get some confirmation from our two council members as to what their feelings are on the committee, because our primary mandate was to provide recommendation to council with regard to matters concerning the delivery of services. And given that, we find ourselves at this kind of annual crisis point. And I guess my question to councillors is, do you feel that the committee has fulfilled its mandate and that what we've been doing here has been any use to council in moving forward?
Chair, I'll speak. Absolutely. But I got to point out I'm tired. Okay. And sometimes somewhat discouraged. But I would love to see the group continue. I'm overstepped now, John. I'm beyond what I should be doing. I think I'd heard you describe retirement.
Yeah.
Come on, John, this is a non-partisan council, if ever there was one. Come on. Join us.
What are you saying, Chris?
I said you should run.
Oh, well,
Or chair this group.
Well, I've considered it. I sure, I would like to see, a commitment from the quorum that we have today that, we would move forward regardless of who takes the chair. It's very important to us to have active community representation. I think this has been a wonderful opportunity, and a lot of work has gone into this committee from its inception, and it's given the community a voice, and we're deeply appreciative of it. And I hope that we've created the impression that we've tried to be proactive as we've moved forward. One thing I will suggest is that in the absence of a volunteer for a full-time chair, what I will put on the table at this point is a suggestion that maybe 2 or 3 of us volunteer to host a rotating chair, at least for the interim. And I would go so far as to say that I will volunteer to host the next meeting. But I'd like to alternate with somebody, because I'm kind of like, I'm not that stoked about chairing the meeting. I've got the skills to do it with regard to procedure, but I feel that my role, is more important as a voice at the table. And I have no problem running a meeting from the perspective of being an unbiased chair. And obviously I would respect that. I have chaired one of the meetings in the past, but that is a concern of mine. I don't want to give up my voice at the table at this point, but I don't want to see this thing die. And, I will volunteer to chair the first meeting in a series of rotating chairmanships if we find a couple people agreeable to that as we move forward.
Thank you, John. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. I would take a turn at chairing a meeting. But I would also suggest that the determination of whether or not we continue as an advisory group wait until after the election, and see what the community as a whole feels if those questions are asked. It'll be an opinion poll. It won't be a binding referendum. But I mean, if we're all working our buns off and just spinning our wheels, then what's the point, I guess, is where I'm coming from. So, John, if you'll chair the next meeting and we continue, I would chair the one following.
I was hoping you'd step up, Christine. So, yeah, absolutely. That gives me some relief already. That, you know, I see that taking us, you know, down the road a month or two here. So, yeah, thanks.
Okay.
So then to make this a quick snip and a mop up, does the rest of the table agree to this as being an interim solution of having Councillor Thompson and Mr. DeHaan being the rotating chairs moving forward? We actually need a motion for that. So would somebody be willing to make that motion on behalf of the table? Alan, thank you. Do we get a second on that? Anne, thank you. Anybody opposed to that motion as presented? Congratulations, folks. Your new chairs in rotation are Christine Thompson and John DeHaan. Thank you, guys.
You're welcome, I think.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, I will finalize kind of my last meeting here and follow through on the rest of the agenda. So we have new business, the establishment of public survey subcommittee. Chris, do you want to take the lead on this and discuss it?
Public service. Yes. Yeah, thanks, Chair. Basically, earlier, about a month ago, Council began to discuss the suggestion of a referendum. And I say referendum, it's not a referendum, it's not binding, but an opinion discovery of the community, and at that about supportive housing. And I really, at that time, felt that it's too limiting. That a survey based on other surveys, based on one that we have done ourselves as a group, be conducted. We have lots of models about surveys on the issue of supportive housing, homelessness, and to discover what the community thinks and to discover what they would prefer. Anyways, I was proposing that to council that we do a survey and but council decided that they'd rather proceed with a single or double item referendum or opinion question on the ballot, and to be decided the actual wording. I am kind of hoping that this group will give some suggestions on the issue. If somehow, yeah, anyways, that's basically what I'd like to say about that at this point. I know that Anne had spoke about and wanted propose doing a survey. Remember about a year ago, Anne, we were talking about it, and it wouldn't have been hard to do, but somehow I was hoping to get the pit count done, then do the survey, but a global epidemic got in the way. And, but if it really, at that time when I sent out this agenda, that's what council, hadn't quite decided that they would. So that basically the council is going to proceed with a opinion survey about supportive housing, the wording to be decided in order to discover if the community wants it or will support it. Got me. The decision is made on the October 19th meeting. But my alternative was I'd still like to do, I still think needs to get done, some kind of survey to flesh out, what model would the community support? If they won't support a residence of 34 people, what would they like to support? Anyways, and flesh that out with the community. Okay, because I really hate to take away something without providing an alternative. So that was my thinking on the survey. If anybody else has got any interest in it, you know, I'm willing to pursue it. If not, just let it sit back for now.
John, you had your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. I've been following this one closely. We ran a poll on the coalition site a few days ago. The response was hard and heavy for about 24 hours. Out of a total of, I think 115 respondents, no, sorry, 113 respondents, we had 108, I believe, in favor and 5 against. Now, the question that I asked was important because I did not ask the referendum questions, or the proposed referendum questions. What I asked was, do you think that these questions should go to the public in the first place? Now, the reason I phrased it that way is because I've got mixed feelings about this. I agree wholeheartedly with Neil, who put the motion on the table, that the community needs to have a say here. And I think our poll was an overwhelming indication that they would like to have a say. But I want to bring forward a reality here. And I hear what Chris is saying about, you know, the questions not getting a clear indication of what the public might be in favor of. Now, we came to the table, C4 came to the table almost 2 years ago with a proposal saying that, look, it's going to be hard to get community support for just a, you know, wet housing facility on 2nd Street. Obviously, the community opposition was overwhelming. However, what we are hearing from people is the idea that they would like to see housing coupled with programming. And with, I had a conversation with Brian Taylor one day about it as well, and about what he termed as purpose-based programming as well. Given that, we've thrown this idea around and we've come up with this campus of care, which is something that is kind of unique to our community. Now, I want to put it to you that BC Housing backed off on the 2nd Street proposal for supportive housing. And given that, they did something very unusual considering their regular modus operandi. They effectively gave us almost 2 years now to come up with something palatable and something that bears the stamp, rubber stamp, I suppose, of City Council, City Council's blessing. And we've had an opportunity that most communities have not. BC Housing usually goes into a community and does what they want. I don't know why, but we managed, I guess, to send a message. Now, I almost feel like swearing here because we're 2 years down the road. And I'm starting to feel like we have squandered that opportunity. We've had a lot of good ideas coming across the table. And we know we can get community support for certain initiatives. The community made it obvious they didn't want to see just bing, bang, boom, wet housing, so to speak, but we could probably muster up support for something that included supports or adequate supports. Given that, here we are once again at the 11th hour with apparently, and I don't know if this is still real, but my last conversation led me to believe that we had some sort of a January deadline to articulate this thing and give it to BC Housing and say, here you go, City Council wants to do this, this is what we want. And damn, October 19th, we're gonna have a council meeting to figure out whether we're gonna ask the community whether they like things that we already know they don't like. So, you know, the questions, yeah, we know the community wants input, and I, you know, I'm here because of community input, and I think it's important. But I think that Chris's question is equally as valid, because what we do need our mission here is to send an articulated plan to BC Housing about what we do want. So I don't need to conduct a referendum to tell you that a huge percentage of people in this town are going to say, we don't like this. And the questions, there's two questions. One is concerning a year-round shelter. That's a departure from the norm. Presently, we've worked towards an emergency cold weather shelter. And the question is do you support do you support supportive housing as defined by BCH? Well, who the hell knows what that is? Like the average townster here doesn't know what that is. They don't know what BC Housing's got on the table. It's up to us to give them a plan. So I see a pitfall to this. I think it's a good idea. I think we need community input, and I think council was wise to go to staff to look at the wording of the question if we're going to decide to go that route with an opinion poll. But for God's sakes, like our mission here is to put something on the table and for council to take something to BC Housing. And I just see all this stuff is, you know, we're just pussyfooting around here. And I'm feeling like I'm dealing with Trump or something on affordable health care. Like, where is the plan? So I think you probably hear me, I'm going to shut up, but where's the plan? Let's come up with a plan. Let's put a plan in front of the people. We know they want input, and I agree with it, but let's put a plan in front of them. There's my speech.
Thank you, John. Teresa, you had your hand up next.
Thank you. So I think the piece that's concerning to me is that when we talk about what the plan was in the past, that it's referred to simply as a wet housing facility. And I think that really misses the mark. We had the opportunity to have a supportive housing facility. As the operators, there was a lot of opportunity there available for us to define what our programming would be. The language was wide open in that section of the contracting that we could figure out what kind of programming we wanted to put in place. So unfortunately, the general public at this point is not educated about what the definition of supportive housing is, because they've already fought against the idea, unfortunately. So I think the difficulty that we have at this point in putting those questions out is without an opportunity for public engagement and education, that you are going to get something like a negative answer because people don't have that, they don't have that understanding of what it means to provide supportive housing. So, you know, I can't say that I think it's a great idea. The other difficulty is that even if we get a response back where the general public says, you know what, we're not into this, we don't want this idea because they're afraid of what that looks like, that it can just go ahead and happen anyway. And then what we have is a community that's divided against the idea.
John, you have your hand up.
I'd just like to add something. This is not a rebuttal, Teresa. I'd just like to add that one very important conversation that we need to have, and I pointed this out on the responses to the poll. I was very careful not to editorialize on that poll just to see, you know, what happened there and what people had to say. And at the end, I made this comment, is that one thing I think that people are inclined to overlook here is that if the city doesn't get to BC Housing with a concrete proposal, and the city's not going to do that without public support, but if the city doesn't get to BC Housing with a concrete proposal, like really soon, BC Housing is going to put on their big boy pants and they're going to do whatever they want. And that way we won't have any input because, you know, bottom line, like I said earlier, they've given us an opportunity, a 2-year window, which is unheard of with BC Housing. And we we haven't managed to come up with anything concrete. We've had some really good ideas. We're supporting this campus of care model, and I know it's going to take some negotiating to get them to buy into that, because it's unique. It would be unique to our community. It's not the cookie cutter model that they're used to. But I'm optimistic on that. I think we might be able to talk them into it. But we've got to get the city to say, okay, this is what we want to do, and this is where we want to do it. Now, the big issue, if BC Housing gets too frustrated with us, which my prediction is that in 2 months, they're going to be at their threshold of their patient's threshold, and they're going to do what they want, which my educated guess, is that means 2nd Street. And that is going to fly like a lead balloon with this community and our business community as well. So, you know, given that, gee whiz, like, okay, referendum, the election is in December. December, what, 5th or something, I think is what I read. And so that question would go to the public on December the 5th. And then people would toss that thing around for 2 months, saying, well, the public said this, the public said that, what should we do? And now we're talking January, and I heard something about a January deadline. So, you know, I sure wish our time was being spent putting something on the table and having council stamp it and say, this is what we want to do. We've already assessed community opinion. I think we know what the community thinks. And Ann and I have worked hard to, you know, get the message out that we're going to have to settle on something here. We can't just be oppositionally defiant and you know, oppose everything. We will support the campus of care. We will support an alternate location to 2nd Street. But we need to start doing this, putting the plan in place. Thanks.
Councillor Thompson, and then Ann.
I would like to respectfully suggest that further discussion on this particular issue come back after we've had our in-camera meeting. And those minutes have been received by the advisory group with the recommendations that the committee made. And I think that we could probably have a much more open discussion on that at that time.
Great
That's my
idea.
thought.
Okay, Ann, you were next.
I'm just wondering, thanks, Darren, if anybody can actually verify this presumed January deadline from BCH. I keep hearing it, but I've never actually heard anybody say specifically, yes, BCH says you have until January the 31st and then you're toast and we're doing what we want. So where did this deadline come from, and who can verify that this is actually a reality?
Councillor
If I
Thompson.
may, it's my understanding from, and Councillor Mosman can correct me if I'm wrong, that if we are going to do something and as a group, we propose to council and council accepts it, any applications that we want for or wanted to make for funding have to be in by the end of January, so that the decision could be made, because the provincial year end, I believe, is March 31st. So that is my understanding. And if somebody knows better than me or more current information, please correct me.
So you're actually saying that there isn't anything that like a threat hanging over our heads we have exactly until January 31st. This is just an assumption based on their timelines for their budget.
Right.
Actually, if I can clarify, what happens is BC Housing does what they refer to as funding cycles. So the end of January caps their funding cycle for the fiscal moving forward. So what that does is that delays any shovels in ground for a full year to the next funding cycle. So there is a cap, I believe it's January 15th for certain funds. The cap for supported seniors housing was September 15th. And that was then closed. So yeah, so for community supported housing, that I believe ends January 15th for this fiscal moving forward. So I think it's not something bad happens if we don't. It just means that that opportunity has passed. Now, what John said is true. If BC Housing, because they did get a download of another $1 billion from the feds, if they so choose, they could decide to kind of not look at shovel-ready proposals and kind of make their own proposal and follow through, because they do own the land. So John and Teresa both do have a point around that. But as far as that actual funding cycle, I believe it's either the 18th or the 15th of January that proposal call does close. Tammy, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for their thoughts. I think it's been wonderful to be able to be on a group of people that can have some advice, to be able to advise the City Council. But I also want to encourage our City Council members in that you are the ones that represent our community as elected officials. And, you know, when I vote, I vote for people I can have confidence in making good decisions. I don't feel this needs to go as a question on the referendum. I feel that council needs to make a solid decision they can live with and step forward into it. And that, you know, some of us are going to be pleased, some of us aren't. But the fact is we need housing, and none of us are pleased with people living on the streets. And that's all. Thank you, Darren.
Thank you, Tammy. Ann, you had your hand up again?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, has anybody actually taken to BCH yet at all? The fact that we've talked about this campus of care, have they any concept of what it is that we're looking towards and what we would like to see happen in our community? Or are we still waiting to even get them this information because of deadlines and interference, et cetera, et cetera? What's happening with that?
So BC Housing's attitude in dealing with our community is everything has to have approval from the city first. They are so gun shy about putting any resources in here until they know that anything they are going to move forward on has the approval of the city with a capital C. There is no discussion. And the thing to remember, the campus of care is it's multi-ministry. BC Housing only is a small piece. So until the other ministries here that BC Housing is comfortable, it's a layered approach. So the city has their stamp, BC Housing gets their approval, then the other ministries follow suit. So there's no point in hypothesizing of if we do this. Nobody wants to hear that. They want solid commitment that there's an appetite for something like this. Are there any other questions? Ann?
Yeah, sorry. When the mayor got his task force together and brought this to council, did council discuss the campus of care concept and bring it forward at all?
And, you know, I'm not going to tell you what council discussed or not in camera, but I do want to point out that there was a process which we followed that involved this committee. You did make a recommendation. It was painful. We haven't dealt with the in-camera minutes yet, as my colleague Christina has requested we do, and perhaps we should, because I want to point out that that will indicate to you that this group can function, kick a ball, and council will hopefully catch it and punt it a bit further. In other words, we have established a trail.
Councillor Moslin, would you like to make a motion to kind of move us in camera prematurely and jump over those next two items?
Yeah, I will, Chair, but I'm going to ask, I'm again relying on your skill as Chair and the meeting's decision. My plan, as I think I said earlier in the meeting, was just to put those minutes up on the screen, right? Okay,
Yeah.
And then the meeting will decide, and if the meeting decides that they approve them, I will distribute them to the members. I'm quite willing to do that. I just would like to know that the group wants that to happen.
Councillor Thompson, you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. I would like to make a motion that this meeting be recessed and an in-camera meeting be held to discuss the report of the task force, and to then, when that meeting is recessed, reconvene the current meeting.
So just for clarity, that would involve having Mr. McKinnon cease the recording. We stay where we are, and then we have him restart the recording after that. Is that what I'm to understand?
Yes.
Good idea, yeah.
Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Anybody disagree with that in the moment? Okay. Chris, do you have the ability to shut off record, or do we need Mr. McKinnon to do that?
I think we need Mr. McKinnon. Is he around? He's the city. Kevin, if you're there, can you turn off the recording? You did manage to get Tanis in the room. I think. Hi, Tanis. Sorry, I left you in the waiting room. Sorry.
Okay.
And Deb Baker's also on the phone with us as well from the DBA.
Oh, excellent. Okay. Oh, it says Deborah phone. I couldn't figure out who that was. Okay, great. Super. So has anybody been able to get Kevin's attention?
Anyone got Kevin's cell? We could phone him.
Yeah. I'll chat to him.
Kevin has left the room.
These Zoom rooms are a real pain. Because in a real meeting, of course, non-members would just get up and leave, right? That isn't the normal meetings. Okay, I still haven't got a hold of Kevin. 1
I'll
second.
get a hold of Daniel.
Thank you, Christine, if you don't mind. So, Chair, then what I'm going to have to ask is non-members to leave the meeting. Is that the right thing to do, Chair?
No, because we're still actively recording this.
Okay.
So no. But what we can do is we can put a pause on moving in camera till Mr. McKinnon comes in and wrap up a couple of your other items under the new business, so we're not just kind of twiddling our thumbs.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
So your next one on there, if I'm not mistaken, was the Facebook posting of minutes.
Chair, I'm kind of glad we got to this point because we actually have got appointed or lined up 2 volunteer chairs. Whoa. And so we might even, have more future minutes. Anyways, Chair, unless somebody has a better idea on the distribution of the minutes, that was my plan. If there's, I'd like to see a motion to it, unless, or whatever.